Ambassador Krelva stood in the grand chamber of the Galactic Council and tried not to show his irritation. His 4 eyes blinked in sequence as he read the assignment datapad again. Surely there had been some mistake. "You want me to observe humans?" he asked, his translator converting his clicks and whistles into standard galactic speech. "In actual combat?" Council Leader Thex nodded, her crystalline form shimmering under the chamber lights. "Yes, Ambassador. We need an unbiased report on human military capabilities. You have observed 47 different species over your career. You are the logical choice." Krelva had served the Galactic Council for 3 centuries. He had watched the court negotiate peace treaties. He had documented the Vrillik's defensive strategies. He had even observed the legendary Canthros warriors in training exercises. But humans, they had only discovered faster-than-light travel 47 years ago. They were practically children playing with starships. "The Vrexian Empire has engaged Earth in a border conflict," Thex continued. "The Council must decide if humans deserve full membership or if they should remain under our protection. Your observations will guide this decision." Krelva accepted the assignment because refusing a council directive was unthinkable. But privately, he considered this a waste of his considerable talents. Humans were weak, short-lived creatures from a small blue planet. Their recorded history showed constant warfare among themselves, which meant they lacked the unity necessary for true power. The Vrexians, by contrast, had conquered 43 star systems over 4,000 years. This would be a quick educational observation of a doomed species making its last stand. He arrived at the human command carrier 3 days later. The ship was called the Indomitable, which Krelva found amusingly optimistic. As his shuttle docked, he reviewed the basic facts about humans. Average lifespan, 80 years. Average height, 1.7 meters. No natural armor, no enhanced strength, no telepathic abilities. They breathed oxygen, required liquid water, and died easily from radiation exposure. How such fragile beings had even reached space remained a mystery to him. The docking bay doors opened, and Krelva got his first in-person look at humans. 2 officers stood waiting. The first was a male wearing a dark blue uniform with silver markings. He stood straight with his hands clasped behind his back. The second was a female, shorter than the male, carrying a data tablet. "Ambassador Krelva," the male said, performing what humans called a salute by touching his hand to his forehead. "I am Commander Tae Young. This is Lieutenant Ji Hai. We will be your liaison officers during your stay." Krelva studied them carefully. Commander Tae Young appeared young, perhaps only 30 years old. Far too young for command in any sensible military. His face showed no emotion, but his eyes seemed to watch everything at once. Lieutenant Ji Hai smiled, which Krelva's research indicated was a friendly gesture among humans, but something about her expression made him uncomfortable. "Welcome aboard the Indomitable," Ji Hai said. "We have prepared an observation deck for you with full access to tactical displays and communication channels. You will be able to see everything we do." "Everything?" Krelva asked. "Most species restricted observer access during military operations." "Everything," Tae Young confirmed. "We have nothing to hide, Ambassador. You will see exactly how humans fight." They led him through the ship's corridors. Krelva noted the narrow passages, the harsh lighting, and the constant activity. Humans rushed past carrying equipment, their voices filling the air with rapid communication. Everything felt chaotic compared to the orderly military vessels he had observed before. The observation deck was a small room with large windows overlooking space and multiple display screens showing various ship systems. A comfortable chair had been modified for Krelva's anatomy. A food synthesizer had been programmed with nutrients suitable for his biology. "The Vrexian fleet is expected to arrive in approximately 36 hours, Ji Hai explained, her fingers dancing across her data tablet. "They have numerical superiority, as you will see in the tactical briefing." "Numerical superiority?" Krelva felt a twinge of concern. "By how much?" "Our long-range scouts detected 212 Vrexian warships," Tae Young said calmly. "We have 43 vessels in our defensive fleet." Krelva's translator made a sound like choking. "That is a 5-to-1 disadvantage. Commander, you must request reinforcements immediately. No military force can withstand such odds." Tae Young and Ji Hai exchanged a glance. Was that amusement in their eyes? "We have called for reinforcements," Tae Young said. "They will arrive in approximately 96 hours. Until then, we hold the line with what we have. But that is suicide." Krelva protested. You should retreat and defend a more strategic position. Retreat is not an option, Tae-Young replied, his voice still calm. Behind us is the colony world of New Seoul. 2 million civilians live there. We will not abandon them. Krelva settled into his chair and began reviewing the tactical data. The more he read, the more convinced he became that he was about to witness the final battle of humanity's brief journey into space. The Vrexians had superior numbers, superior firepower, and 4,000 years of military experience. The humans had determination, which was admirable but ultimately useless against overwhelming force. Over the next 30 hours, Krelva studied human military history from his observation deck. The files contained records of something called World War II, where humans had killed each other by the millions. There were accounts of the Korean War, where humans had fought in brutal cold weather. He read about Vietnam, where a technologically superior force had been defeated by unconventional tactics. Your species fights among itself constantly, he observed to Ji-Hai during one of her visits. We did, she agreed. Past tense. Once we reached the stars, we realized we had bigger concerns than fighting each other. Now we save our fighting skills for those who threaten us. But you have such short lives, Krelva said. Only 80 years. How can you develop expertise in anything? Ji-Hai smiled that unsettling smile again. We learn fast, Ambassador, we have to. And we teach each new generation everything the last one learned. Knowledge accumulates. As the 36-hour mark approached, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. Krelva watched the tactical displays as red markers appeared at the edge of sensor range. The Vrexian fleet had arrived exactly on schedule. Commander Tae-Young entered the observation deck and stood beside Krelva's chair, watching the same displays. They are beautiful ships, Tae-Young said quietly. The Vrexians build with elegance. Those dreadnoughts are 200 years old, some of them, passed down through generations of warriors. You admire your enemy? Krelva asked. We respect them, Tae-Young corrected. Respect and admiration are not the same thing. The Vrexians started this war by destroying 3 of our cities. 40 million humans died in the first week. We will never forgive that. But we can recognize their ships are well designed. The red markers grew larger on the display as the Vrexian fleet advanced. Krelva counted them carefully. Yes, 212 ships, against humanity's 43. Ambassador, Tae-Young said, his voice taking on a different tone. I want you to understand something before this begins. We know the odds. We know what we are facing. And we are going to win. Krelva looked up at the human commander's face. There was no bravado there, no false confidence. Just calm certainty. How? Krelva asked. Tae-Young smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. Because we are very good at fighting, Ambassador. We have had a lot of practice. The Vrexian fleet continued its advance. On the tactical display, the human fleet began moving into position. Krelva activated his recording equipment. Whatever happened next, the Galactic Council would have a complete record. He just hoped he would survive to deliver it. The assembly hall was silent. Ambassador Hana stood at the center platform, her hands clasped behind her back. Around her, representatives from 200 alien species sat in their assigned seats. The massive chamber stretched upward like a cathedral, its walls covered in screens showing star maps and military data. The Vrelian ambassador rose from his seat. He was tall, with gray skin and 3 eyes that glowed with an orange light. His voice boomed through the chamber. The Vrelian Empire has spoken. You have 7 days to surrender the Outer Rim territories. If you refuse, we will take them by force. Our fleet of 40,000 warships is already positioned at the border. One by one, the delegates stood and announced their decisions. The Krell Republic would not fight. The Manthar Collective would remain neutral. The Zephyr Union would observe from a distance. Each species had their reasons, but the message was clear. No one wanted to face the Vrelian Armada. Ambassador Hana watched this parade of surrender without expression. She had expected it. The Vrelians were strong and the other species were afraid. Fear made people practical, and practicality meant survival. She understood that. But Earth had a different view of survival. When her turn came, the chamber fell into a strange quiet. Everyone knew what Earth would say. The newest member of the Galactic Assembly, humanity had been part of this community for only 23 years. Their technology was basic. Their fleet was small. They had 300 ships, maybe less. Ancient vessels that barely qualified as military grade. Some delegates were already smiling. Hana stepped forward. She spoke in a clear, calm voice that carried through the hall. Earth rejects the Vrelian ultimatum. We will defend the Outer Rim territories. The chamber erupted in noise. Laughter mixed with shocked gasps. The Manthar delegate actually stood up to ask if the translation system had made an error. Several species whispered among themselves, wondering if humans understood what they were saying. The Vrelian ambassador's three eyes focused on Hana. His mouth curved into something like a smile. How many ships will Earth commit to this? Defense? Hana met his gaze without blinking. 12,000. The laughter stopped. For a moment, absolute silence filled the chamber. Then everyone started talking at once. Delegates shouted questions. Screens flickered as analysts ran calculations. The number was impossible. Earth didn't have 12,000 ships. Every intelligence agency in the galaxy agreed on that point. The humans had barely 300 vessels in their registered defense fleet. The Vrelian ambassador's smile grew wider. You lie, human. Your species has 300 ships. Do you think we are fools? I think you heard me correctly, Hana replied. 12,000 ships. The Vrelian ambassador turned to address the full assembly. This is clearly a desperate bluff. Earth knows they cannot win, so they invent impossible numbers. It would be amusing if it were not so pathetic. He turned back to Hana. I will give your species one final chance. You have 30 days to withdraw this statement. If you do not, Earth will be declared hostile to the Vrelian Empire. We will treat you as enemies, noted, Hana said. The session ended in chaos. Delegates from various species surrounded Hana, begging her to reconsider. The Krell ambassador actually grabbed her arm. You will doom your entire species, he hissed. The Vrelians will destroy Earth, your colonies will burn. Billions will die. For what, pride? Hana gently removed his hand from her arm. Thank you for your concern. She walked out of the chamber alone. Her security team waited outside, but she waved them away. She needed a moment to herself. The weight of what she had just done pressed down on her shoulders. She had committed Earth to war. Every word she spoke had been authorized by the government, but that didn't make it easier. Her communication device buzzed. Admiral Jiho's face appeared on the small screen. I watched the session, he said. His face was weathered, lined with age and experience. You did well, did I? Hana asked. They think I'm insane. Good, let them think that. Jiho's expression didn't change. Are you ready? Are you? We've been ready for 23 years. He paused. I'm sending the authorization code now. Operation Quiet Thunder begins in 10 minutes. The screen went dark. Hana looked out the window of the assembly station. Stars filled her view, countless points of light in the darkness. Somewhere out there, Earth hung in space, her home. She had just bet everything that her people were ready for what came next. On Earth, Admiral Jiho stood in the command center buried 3 kilometers beneath the Pacific Ocean. Around him, hundreds of officers worked at their stations. Screens showed data from every corner of the solar system. Jiho picked up a communication device and spoke one sentence. Begin Operation Quiet Thunder. Across Earth, the response was immediate. On the moon, massive doors opened in the sides of craters, doors that had been hidden for 2 decades. Inside Mars, entire mountains split apart. Asteroid mining stations revealed their true purpose as the rock around them fell away. Hidden shipyards, 16 of them scattered through the solar system, came to life. Lights blazed in facilities that officially didn't exist. Ships that had been constructed in secret over 23 years began their power-up sequences. In a command room on Mars, Commander Do-hyun watched as the first vessels moved out of Facility Prometheus. Row after row of warships, sleek and deadly. Nothing like the bulky vessels Earth had shown to the galaxy. Sir, his tactical officer said, all facilities report ready status. Total ship count is 12,347. Do-hyun allowed himself a small smile. Good. The extra 347 are just insurance. On Earth, in a training facility in Korea, young pilot Tae-yang sat in his cockpit. He had trained for this moment for 3 years. Around him, thousands of other pilots were doing the same. They had all been told they were part of a deep space exploration program. The truth had only been revealed 2 weeks ago. Tae-yang's hands moved over his controls. The ship's systems responded perfectly. The vessel hummed with power. It was so different from the old training craft. This was a Predator built for one purpose. His communication screen lit up. His squadron leader's face appeared. Ready, Taeyang? Yes, sir. Good. In 30 days, we show the galaxy what happens when they give humans time to prepare. Back on the assembly station, Hana received a message. A simple text from Admiral Jiho, 3 words, the answer comes. She looked out at the stars again. Somewhere in the darkness, the Vrelian fleet waited. 40,000 ships, the largest armada ever assembled. They thought Earth was weak. They thought humans were primitive. They thought 12,000 ships was an impossible lie. In 30 days, they would learn the truth. Earth had been quiet for 23 years. Not because they were weak, not because they were afraid, but because they were building, learning, preparing. The galaxy expected Earth to stay quiet forever. They were about to discover how wrong they were. 3 days after the space battle, Commander Tae-young visited Krelva in his quarters. The ambassador had been reviewing footage of the engagement, trying to write a coherent report. Every time he thought he understood what he had witnessed, he watched another impossible human tactic and had to start over. Ambassador, Tae-young said, standing in the doorway, we have received intelligence that Vrexian ground forces have fortified positions on the moon Targus 7. We are deploying troops to liberate the location. Would you like to observe the operation? Krelva's primary eyes widened. Observe ground combat? Commander, I am a diplomat, not a soldier. I have no experience with surface warfare. You will be perfectly safe, Tae-young assured him. We have established a forward command post with full protection. You will observe from there. Against every instinct screaming at him to refuse, Krelva agreed. He had already written in his report that humans fought space battles with insane tactics. He needed to see if they were equally reckless on the ground. The transport shuttle landed on Targus 7 2 days later. The moon was cold and rocky, with a thin atmosphere that humans could breathe but found uncomfortable. The forward command post was a prefabricated structure half buried in the ground, with sensor equipment and communication arrays bristling from its roof. Inside, Krelva met Colonel Dong-hyun, the ground forces commander. The colonel was older than most humans Krelva had met, perhaps 50 years old, with gray hair and a face marked by scars. Welcome to Targus 7, Ambassador, Dong-hyun said, his voice rough. We are about to kick the Vrexians off this rock. You picked an exciting time to visit. The tactical display showed the situation clearly. Vrexian forces numbered approximately 80,000 troops, dug into fortified positions with heavy weapons, shields, and supply bunkers. Earth forces numbered 12,000. This is worse than the space battle, Krelva said. You are outnumbered 7-1. How can you possibly succeed? Dong-hyun smiled, revealing several missing teeth. Ambassador, ground warfare is different from space combat. Numbers matter less than tactics. Watch and learn. The colonel began his briefing. His plan violated every principle of conventional warfare Krelva knew. Instead of establishing supply lines, human forces would acquire materials from the enemy. Instead of avoiding the abandoned colony's infrastructure, they would use its tunnel systems. Instead of assaulting the Vrexian fortifications directly, they would encourage the enemy to come out and play. This is madness, Krelva protested. You cannot fight without supplies. We have supplies, Dong-hyun corrected. The enemy has supplies. Same thing. Over the next 2 days, Krelva watched in disbelief as the human plan unfolded. Specialist Na-young, a scout sniper, moved into position 600 meters from Vrexian headquarters. She lay motionless in the cold dirt for 37 hours, barely breathing, until the enemy commander emerged for an inspection. One shot. The commander fell dead. Why spend so much time for one target? Krelva asked. The colonel pulled up reports on his display. Watch what happens to their command structure now. The Vrexian forces descended into chaos. 3 different officers tried to claim command. Communication broke down. Units began acting independently. One sniper shot, and the enemy organization collapsed. Sergeant Jin-ho led an infantry platoon through the colony's old tunnel system. Vrexian scouts detected their approach and set up an ambush at one tunnel exit. The humans walked into the trap exactly as expected. Then Jin-ho's team detonated explosives they had placed in the tunnel walls days earlier, collapsing the ceiling on the Vrexian ambush force. You knew it was a trap, Krelva said. Of course, Dong-hyun replied. We wanted them to think they were clever. Then we showed them what clever actually looks like. The humans fought at night, during the moon's 14-hour dark period when most species would rest. They used primitive chemical lights and thermal imaging that Vrexian sensors could not properly detect. Krelva watched through camera feeds as human soldiers moved like ghosts through the darkness, attacking enemy positions and disappearing before reinforcements arrived. Private Yoon Seo operated something called psychological warfare. She broadcast messages in perfect Vrexian dialect, her voice calm and friendly, as she described how the Vrexian fleet had been destroyed, how no reinforcements would arrive, how their supplies were running low. "You are alone," Yoon Seo's voice said through captured Vrexian communication channels. "Your empire has abandoned you. Your commander is dead. Your supplies are burning. Surrender now and the humans will treat you fairly. Fight, and you will die on this frozen rock forgotten by your people." Krelva watched Vrexian troop movements on the tactical display. Their formations became more defensive. Their patrols stayed closer to base. Morale was collapsing faster than any weapon could achieve. Lieutenant Min Jae commanded an artillery unit positioned in the rocky hills. Instead of firing at enemy fortifications, his team targeted geological fault lines that scans had revealed in the moon's crust. The bombardment triggered localized earthquakes that shook Vrexian bunkers and collapsed their defensive trenches. When Vrexian troops evacuated their shaking bunkers, human infantry was waiting in ambush positions. "You are not fighting," Krelva said, his voice filled with horror. "You are hunting." "Yes," Donghyun agreed without shame. "We learned hunting before we learned farming. It is one of our oldest skills." On the 5th day, Vrexian forces attempted a counterattack. They gathered 15,000 troops for a massive assault on human positions. Colonel Donghyun let them come. The Vrexians advanced across open ground, their shields protecting them from human fire. They reached the human defensive line and prepared for close combat. Then Donghyun gave an order Krelva did not expect. "All units, retreat. Fall back to secondary positions." The human forces withdrew, leaving their fortifications empty. The Vrexians occupied the positions, celebrating their victory. They had captured human bunkers, human equipment, and human supplies. Except the supplies were not real supplies. They were explosives disguised as supply crates. The detonation destroyed 4,000 Vrexian troops instantly. The survivors fled in panic only to run into human forces that had circled around during the retreat. The counterattack became a massacre. "You gave them a victory," Krelva said numbly, "just so you could destroy them when they took it." "We gave them what they expected," Donghyun said. "Humans defending fortifications. Then we showed them the fortifications were bait." Krelva spent the next 6 days watching humans fight in ways that made no tactical sense, until he saw the results. They attacked from directions the enemy thought were impassable. They used captured Vrexian weapons better than the Vrexians used them. They turned the moon's environment into a weapon, causing rock slides, toxic gas leaks from industrial facilities, and even using the colony's old mining equipment as improvised artillery. Specialist Ne Young, the sniper, eliminated 47 high-value targets over 11 days. Each death caused more chaos in Vrexian command structure. Sergeant Jinho's platoon infiltrated enemy camps wearing captured armor, sabotaged supplies, and escaped before anyone realized what had happened. On the 11th day, the remaining Vrexian commander requested a meeting. Colonel Donghyun agreed immediately. They met on neutral ground with both sides armed but not firing. The Vrexian commander was a large, scaled creature with 4 arms and natural armor plates. He looked at Donghyun with something like respect. "You should have lost," the Vrexian said through his translator. "We outnumbered you. We had fortifications. We had supplies. You had numbers," Donghyun agreed. "We had motivation. This moon is near human territory. You are invaders. We are defenders. There is a difference." "We surrender," the Vrexian commander said. "My troops will lay down weapons if you promise fair treatment." "You have my word," Donghyun said. "Your wounded will receive medical care. Your troops will be held humanely until prisoner exchange can be arranged. We do not harm those who surrender." Krelva watched the Vrexian troops emerge from their fortifications, disarmed and defeated. Human soldiers directed them to processing areas. Medic Haewon moved among the Vrexian wounded, treating injuries with the same care she gave to human casualties. "I do not understand you," Krelva said to Colonel Donghyun that evening. "You fight with such violence but then show mercy to defeated enemies. How can you be both cruel and kind?" Donghyun looked out at the captured Vrexians being fed from human supplies. "We are not cruel, Ambassador. We are effective. There is a difference. We fight to win because losing means extinction. But once the fight is over, there is no benefit in causing suffering. The Vrexian soldiers followed orders from their commanders. They are not evil. They are just on the wrong side of this war. But they would have killed you, Krelva protested. Yes, Donghyun agreed. And we would have killed them. That is what war means. But war is over now, at least on this moon. Now we show them that humans can be trusted to keep our word. Maybe next time, more Vrexians will surrender earlier, saving lives on both sides. Krelva returned to the Indomitable the next day. His report was growing longer, filled with observations he could barely believe. Humans fought with calculated madness, using tactics no military academy would teach. They won battles they should have lost. They showed mercy to enemies they should have hated. The memorial service was held in the Indomitable's main assembly hall. Krelva attended because Commander Tae-young had personally invited him. The ambassador expected a brief military ceremony, perhaps a moment of silence, then back to normal operations. Instead, he witnessed something that shook his understanding of human psychology. 3,247 names appeared on holographic displays floating above the assembly hall. Each name glowed softly, accompanied by a photograph showing a smiling human face. These were the dead from the space battle 2 weeks ago. Krelva had seen the casualty numbers in reports, but seeing individual faces made the losses feel different. More real, more terrible. Commander Tae-young stood before the assembled crew. His uniform was perfect, his posture military straight, but his eyes were red and his voice shook when he spoke. "We gathered today to honor those who gave everything," Tae-young said. "They were our friends, our colleagues, our family. They died defending Earth and her colonies from an enemy that sought to destroy us. Their sacrifice ensured our victory. We will remember them." Around Krelva, human crew members stood at attention. Many were crying openly. Others stared at the holographic names with expressions of profound sadness. No one tried to hide their emotions. No one pretended to be strong. This confused Krelva deeply. In every warrior species he had observed, soldiers maintained emotional control during ceremonies. Showing weakness was considered dishonorable. Yet here, humans displayed their grief publicly, and no one seemed ashamed. After the ceremony, Krelva approached Commander Tae-young. "Why do your soldiers cry? Does this not damage morale?" Tae-young looked at him with tired eyes. "Ambassador, we cry because we are sad. Our friends are dead. Pretending we are not sad would be lying. And lying to ourselves makes us weak, not strong." "But you are military officers," Krelva insisted. "You must maintain discipline." "Discipline is following orders even when afraid," Tae-young replied. "Discipline is doing your duty even when it costs you everything. Discipline is not refusing to feel emotions. We are human, Ambassador. We feel everything. Fear, anger, sadness, joy. We just do not let those feelings stop us from doing what needs to be done." Over the following days, Krelva conducted interviews with human survivors. Each conversation added more confusion to his understanding. Captain Young-sik commanded a cruiser that had suffered 40% casualties during the battle. He explained tactical decisions with clinical precision, describing how he had positioned his damaged ship to draw enemy fire away from more vulnerable vessels. 300 crew members died because of his order. "It was the correct decision," Young-sik said, his voice flat. "The alternative was losing 2 frigates with full crews. My ship could absorb more damage." The mathematics were clear. Tears streamed down his face as he spoke. His hands shook. But his words remained steady. "Do you regret your decision?" Krelva asked. "Every day," Young-sik whispered. "I see their faces when I close my eyes. I know their names. I wrote letters to their families. I will carry this weight until I die. But if I faced the same situation again, I would make the same choice, because that is what command means. Making terrible decisions and living with the consequences." Lieutenant Eun-kyung was the pilot who had survived a kamikaze burn similar to Captain Hyun-woo's famous attack. She had ejected from her fighter seconds before it impacted a Vrexian cruiser. Krelva asked her the question that had bothered him since watching that tactic. Why would you attempt such a maneuver? The risk was enormous. Eun-kyung looked at him with hard eyes. The Vrexians glassed Beijing on the war's first day. My home city. My family lived there. My parents, my brother, my childhood friends. 40 million people died, Ambassador. I watched it happen on news feeds from orbit. 40 million. She paused, breathing deeply. That cruiser I destroyed. It was part of the fleet that attacked Beijing. Maybe it was one of the ships that fired on my city. Maybe not. Does not matter. They were the enemy and they needed to die. My life in exchange for killing 1,000 of them? I would make that trade every single time. But you could have died, Krelva said. I was already dead, Yun-Kyung replied quietly. I died when Beijing burned. Now I'm just finishing the work I was supposed to do before that happened. Dr. Wu Jin showed Krelva the medical bay, where human soldiers received treatment for what they called combat stress reactions. The ambassador had never heard of such a condition. Warriors either fought or they did not. There was no middle ground. Human minds are not designed for modern warfare, Wu Jin explained, leading Krelva through the treatment ward. We evolved to fight with spears and arrows in small groups against enemies we could see. Space combat, with thousands dying in seconds from weapons fired across vast distances, creates psychological trauma. They stopped beside a bed where a young human female lay staring at the ceiling. Her eyes were open but seemed to see nothing. This is Ensign Misun, Wu Jin said gently. She was on communications during the battle. She heard the distress calls from the destroyed ships, hundreds of voices calling for help that never came. Her mind could not process the trauma. Now she does not speak, does not respond to stimuli. She is here but also not here. Will she recover? Krelva asked. Maybe, Wu Jin said. Human minds are resilient. We have treated others with similar conditions who eventually returned to duty, but the damage remains. She will carry this wound forever even if the symptoms improve. Krelva felt something he had not expected. Pity for these strange, violent, emotional creatures who broke under stress yet continued fighting anyway. Intelligence Officer So-hee provided Krelva with unrestricted access to Earth's military databases. She sat with him for hours explaining the history that had shaped human warfare. We have been fighting for 10,000 years, So-hee said, pulling up historical records. Long before we had writing, we had war. Tribes fighting over hunting grounds, cities fighting over farmland, nations fighting over resources, religion, ideology, or simple hate. She showed him images from human history, ancient soldiers fighting with bronze swords, medieval armies with castles and catapults, industrial age warfare with tanks and aircraft, nuclear weapons capable of destroying cities. Each era brought new ways to kill. The Korean demilitarized zone, so he said, displaying maps. A border where my ancestors faced enemy artillery for 70 years. They learned to dig tunnels, hide bunkers, and fight in conditions that would break most species. More images appeared. Vietnam, where guerrilla fighters defeated a technologically superior enemy through patience, knowledge of terrain, and refusal to quit. The siege of Leningrad, where civilians ate wallpaper paste to survive while fighting invaders. The Battle of Thermopylae, where 300 soldiers held a passage against thousands. Every tactic you have seen us use, so he continued, we learned fighting each other. The crazy maneuvers? We developed those testing them on human enemies. The psychological warfare? We perfected it against human minds. The refusal to surrender? We learned that from watching our ancestors choose death over defeat. Krelva looked at the endless records of human conflict. So much violence, so much death. And yet humans survived. They learned. They adapted. When we finally reached the stars and met other species, so he said quietly, we realized we had an advantage. While the Vrexians spent 4,000 years conquering primitive cultures, we spent 10,000 years fighting ourselves. We know every trick, every tactic, every desperate gambit, because we have used them all on each other. You are proud of this? Krelva asked, horrified. No, so he replied. We are ashamed of how much we fought each other. We are ashamed of the billions who died in stupid wars over stupid reasons. But we cannot change our past. We can only use what we learned to protect our future. That evening, Krelva sat in his quarters and reviewed all his notes. He had witnessed humans fight with terrifying effectiveness. He had seen their tactics, their technology, their determination. But until now, he had not understood the cost. Humans did not fight without feeling pain. They felt everything. They grieved for their dead. They suffered psychological wounds that might never heal. They made decisions that haunted them forever. But they fought anyway, because the alternative was extinction. Krelva began typing his report for the Galactic Council. His hands moved slowly as he chose each word carefully. Humanity is the most dangerous species in the galaxy, he wrote, not because they are strong, but because they are willing to pay any price for survival. They will sacrifice their ships, their lives, their sanity. They will endure trauma that would shatter other species. They will make decisions that haunt them forever. And they will do it all while crying because they are not machines. They are living beings who feel pain but refuse to stop. He paused, then added, I was sent to observe humans in battle. I now regret accepting this assignment. What I have witnessed will haunt me as it haunts them. But I am grateful for one thing. Humanity fights beside us, not against us. Outside his window, human crew members moved through the Indomitable's corridors. They laughed, talked, worked, living their lives despite the memories they carried. Krelva watched them and felt something he had never felt before when observing a warrior species. He felt afraid. The Vrexian fleet moved through space like a swarm of metal insects. Each ship gleamed under the light of the distant star, their formation perfect and disciplined. Krelva watched from his observation deck as 212 warships arranged themselves in the classic hammer and anvil pattern that Vrexian commanders had used for thousands of years. They are positioning for a standard engagement, Lieutenant Jihai said from beside him. She tapped her data tablet, and the tactical display zoomed in on the enemy formation. Dreadnoughts in the center, cruisers on the flanks, destroyers screening. Support vessels hidden behind the main force. Krelva nodded. It was textbook strategy. The Vrexians would use their superior numbers to surround the human fleet, hammer them from all sides, and crush them quickly. Any competent commander would recognize this and order a retreat. Commander Tae-young stood at the communications console, speaking quietly into his headset. Around him, human officers moved with practiced efficiency. No one seemed panicked. No one seemed afraid. Krelva found this disturbing. Did they not understand they were about to die? All ships, this is Tae-young, the commander said, his voice broadcasting across the fleet channel. Execute protocol Crazy Ivan on my mark. Krelva's translator struggled with the phrase. What is Crazy Ivan? He asked Jihai. She grinned. Something we borrowed from our old submarine warfare. Watch. On the tactical display, the human fleet suddenly broke formation. Instead of arranging themselves for a defensive stand, they scattered in seemingly random directions. The Vrexian fleet paused, clearly confused by this maneuver. Then the human ships did something Krelva had never seen in 300 years of military observation. They completely ignored the Vrexian dreadnoughts and heavy cruisers. Instead, every human ship fired their weapons at the same time, and every weapon targeted the supply vessels hiding at the back of the enemy formation. Missiles streaked across space. Energy beams lit up the darkness. In the span of 30 seconds, 18 Vrexian supply ships exploded in brilliant flashes of light. Why? Krelva sputtered. Why target the supply ships? They are not a threat. Exactly, Tae-young said calmly. They are not a threat, so they are poorly defended. And without fuel and ammunition, those beautiful dreadnoughts become very expensive floating coffins. The Vrexian formation began to collapse. Ships broke away to protect the remaining supply vessels. Others tried to pursue the scattered human ships. The elegant hammer and anvil pattern dissolved into chaos. All ships weapons free, Tae-young ordered. Hunt targets of opportunity. What followed was unlike any space battle Krelva had ever witnessed. Human ships did not fight honorably, standing and exchanging fire. They attacked from unexpected angles, fired their weapons while moving at maximum speed, and broke off before the enemy could respond. One human destroyer, the Soul's Hammer, flew directly through a gap in the Vrexian formation, firing in all directions. Captain Hyunwoo is enjoying himself, Ji-hee commented, tracking the destroyer's path on her display. Krelva watched in horror as the Soul's Hammer suddenly changed course, accelerating directly toward a Vrexian dreadnought. Red warning symbols appeared on the tactical display. His reactor is overloading, Krelva shouted. He must shut it down. He knows, Tae-young said quietly. The Soul's Hammer continued accelerating. Krelva saw escape pods ejecting from the destroyer, tiny specks fleeing from the doomed ship. The last pod cleared just seconds before the destroyer crashed into the dreadnought's hull. The reactor detonated in a massive explosion that consumed the dreadnought and 3 nearby cruisers. That is insane, Krelva said, his voice rising. He sacrificed his ship. He saved his crew, Tae-young corrected. And he destroyed 4 enemy vessels in exchange for 1 destroyer. By any calculation, that is an excellent trade. On another part of the battlefield, a human cruiser suddenly went dark. All power shut down. The ship drifted like a piece of debris. Vrexian forces ignored it, focusing on active threats. Then, when 3 Vrexian destroyers flew past, the human cruiser powered up at point-blank range and opened fire. All 3 enemy ships were destroyed before they could react. Dead ship maneuver, HFY explained, seeing Krelva's confusion. We pretend to be destroyed, then surprise the enemy. It works better than you would expect. Throughout the battle, human ships maintained constant communication. They shared targeting data, coordinated their attacks, and adapted their tactics in real time. When one human vessel was damaged, others moved to cover it. When an opportunity appeared, multiple ships exploited it simultaneously. A message came through the fleet channel. Boarding teams away. 3, 2, 6, go, go, go. Krelva switched his view to external cameras and saw small shuttles launching from human ships, racing toward damaged Vrexian vessels. They are boarding enemy ships? During a battle? Major Bo Young leads our boarding teams, Tae-young said. She is very good at her job. The tactical display showed one of the boarded Vrexian cruisers suddenly changing course. Its weapons turned against its own fleet, firing on former allies. Human technicians had taken control of the ship's systems in less than 6 minutes. The battle raged for 3 hours. Krelva watched human crews perform impossible maneuvers, take crazy risks, and fight with a ferocity he had never imagined. A human frigate had its engines destroyed but continued fighting using maneuvering thrusters alone. A cruiser with hull breaches in 4 compartments maintained its position in the battle line. Damaged ships did not retreat. They fought harder. Engineer Sang-woo's voice came through the communications channel. Commander, I can give you 1 more overload burn, but the engines will need 8 hours of repair afterward. Do it, Tae-young ordered. All power to forward weapons. We are ending this now. The Indomitable surged forward, its engines burning brighter than Krelva had seen before. The carrier led a final charge directly at the center of the Vrexian formation. Every human ship followed. They were outnumbered. They were damaged. They should have been destroyed. Instead, they won. The Vrexian commander, faced with a coordinated assault from an enemy that refused to die, made the logical decision. He ordered a retreat. Vrexian ships that could still move engaged their faster-than-light drives and fled the battlefield. Those 2 damaged to escape surrendered. Silence fell across the observation deck. Krelva stared at the tactical display, counting the markers. The Vrexians had arrived with 212 ships. They left with 69. The humans had started with 43 ships and finished with 24 still operational. Casualty reports, Tae-young said quietly. HFY read from her tablet. 19 ships destroyed. 347 crew members killed. 5,891 wounded. Escape pods from destroyed vessels are being recovered now. Tae-young closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, his expression had not changed, but something in his face looked older. Get me damage reports from all surviving vessels. Coordinate rescue operations with medical teams. And someone send a message to Captain Hyunwoo's family. He deserves that before the official notifications go out. The commander turned to Krelva. Well, Ambassador, was our performance satisfactory? Krelva could not speak. His 4 eyes blinked in different patterns, a sign of extreme distress in his species. Finally, he managed to activate his translator. You should have lost, he said. By every tactical calculation, you should have been destroyed. Yes, Tae-young agreed. We should have. But humans are very bad at doing what we should do. We prefer doing what needs to be done instead. How? Krelva asked. How did you win? Tae-young looked out at the debris field that had been a Vrexian fleet. The Vrexians have been warriors for 4,000 years. They know how to fight. But we have been warriors for 10,000 years, Ambassador. We have fought each other in every possible way, on every type of terrain, in every imaginable condition. We learned to fight in our caves with stones. We learned to fight in our oceans with ships. We learned to fight in our skies with aircraft. Every lesson we learned, we remembered. Every tactic that worked, we kept. Every mistake we made, we studied. He turned back to Krelva. The Vrexians fight because it is their culture. We fight because it is our history. They are warriors. We are survivors. There is a difference. HFY approached with her tablet. Sir, the Vrexian commander is requesting permission to recover his damaged vessels and survivors. Permission granted, Tae-young said immediately. Tell him we will assist with medical care for any wounded. And HFY, make sure our people treat the Vrexian casualties with respect. They fought well today. Krelva watched this exchange with growing confusion. Minutes ago, these humans had fought with terrifying violence. Now they offered medical aid to their enemies? What kind of species did this? Ambassador, Tae-young said. I understand you will need time to process what you have seen. Lieutenant Ji-hai will escort you to your quarters. We have a long night ahead of us. As Krelva left the observation deck, he heard Tae-young giving orders to his officers. There was no celebration of victory. No boasting about their triumph. Just calm, professional work to repair ships, treat wounded, and prepare for whatever came next. In his quarters, Krelva began his report for the Galactic Council. His hands shook as he wrote. He had been sent to observe humans in battle. Now he understood why he should have refused this assignment. Humans were terrifying.